The Ivy Leagues are set to lose nearly $500 million after several professors and student groups came out in support of Hamas. You know, there will always be a culture war. No matter what it is that we're fighting for, we're going to find that we disagree with many people. And the culture war may be shifting right now with many people on the right, formerly, whatever you would call the right, seemingly at odds over intervention in Israel and their stance on Israel's response. It's also very interesting to see Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez calling for surgical military strikes to execute Hamas leaders. And for some reason, I'm still seeing Republicans rag on her. It's like, come on. Come on. Things are changing here. I mean, I suppose if your position is anti-intervention, you're kind of like, AOC, chill out. No, but for real, she called for precision strikes. It's a more complicated situation, but that's the gist of what she said. She is still critical of Israel, of course, but she certainly departed from where the DSA currently is. My friends, this story is a white pill. I keep saying, I think we're winning. And I think this is a good example of exactly why and how, and the next step in us actually winning the culture war. Let me stress this again. We are winning. First, there's the obvious. I've talked about it quite a bit. The left don't have kids, and the right is more likely to have kids. That's all that matters. It doesn't mean that Republicans are replacing themselves. Families need to have at least 2 kids. But the left is certainly not. They're aborting, sterilizing their kids, or just not having any outright. That in and of itself mathematically predicts a more conservative future. But alas, many people say, no, Tim, no, because they're indoctrinating our kids. Not no more. Look at this. When all these students started coming out in support of overt acts of terrorism and war crimes, big donors were all of a sudden like, okay, that's it. That's the line. And now they're not going to be giving their money to these Ivy League schools, hotbeds for Marxist activity. Once again, the indoctrination machine is getting a beat down. It's funny to see the Anti-Defamation League try somewhat to criticize Black Lives Matter while excusing the fact that one of the founders of Black Lives Matter's Global Network Foundation has called for the end of Israel. Look, man, I'm not here to debate the merits and the history and who's deserving of what land and who's the original settler. Because, you know what, I got to tell you, I see these leftists and they're like, Israel are settler colonialists and the people who live there are settlers and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, then you got people like, dude, this land was Judea before it and it was Jewish and all that stuff. And I'm like, look, man, it's war. I ain't here to get into the who's right and what and history and all that stuff. I'm here to tell you, man, civilians shouldn't be dying. And that's a problem for us. But war is war, man. And I don't think there's any easy answer or anything I can say to appease the ideological factions. There are people who work at this company who are very pro-Israel, and there are people who are very anti-Israel. Not that anyone here is pretty much supporting what Hamas is doing. But now what we're seeing is that after several professors at multiple Ivy Leagues have come out defending terrorism, the left is losing control of the institutions. Look, just the other day, we had the Daily Wire announce the launching of their streaming service, Bentkey, which is a platform that's going to have a bunch of programs for children. And it's not overtly political. It's, as Jeremy Bourne, co-CEO of Daily Wire, said, it's about wonder and adventure. And I'm like, this is it, man. Daily Wire's launching Snow White. Look, why am I saying this? This segment, this story is about winning culture. Harvard losing a major donor, professors coming out in support of Hamas. Yo, regular Americans are freaked out by this. Imagine how this is going to play out in the election. Yeah, we got an election coming up. Now, the primary is mostly over. The donors aren't coming out for any of these other Republicans. Donald Trump, I tell you, all the PACs, Donald Trump's campaign, they are going to run ads showing the left overtly supporting the murder, kidnapping, and killing of civilians. There's a video going viral right now. It shows college students tearing down posters of people who are kidnapped or missing in Israel. And they're smiling and laughing as they do it. They're evil, man. Dude, I got to tell you, AOC comes out and she's saying like collective punishment is bad. And I'm like, okay, here's my view. Collective punishment, I don't agree with that. And that puts me in disagreement with some of my own friends. Well, yeah, of course. I don't necessarily agree that it's collective punishment, but I certainly am willing to and interested in hearing the perspective of those who are trying to minimize civilian casualties. Completely agree. But Hamas is telling people to stay in these buildings as Israel is seeking to remove military targets. It is war. There is no easy answer. But even AOC, is critical of Hamas. She knows she has to be. Ocasio-Cortez, in an interview, and I saw that the Republicans are ragging on her for this, said we need more precision. It's like, you know what I mean? She says Hamas must be dealt with, and we must have some precision, and collective punishment doesn't work. Israel cut off the water. Well, Hamas is seen on video taking water pipes to make rockets. Okay, like what are we supposed to do about this? It's not easy. It's war. There's propaganda, misinformation. Good luck. The one thing I can tell you is, ain't nobody going to tolerate celebrating the killing of civilians in an unprovoked attack. Oh, I dare say it. I dare say it. Now, let's be real. I understand there is a conflict here, but what I'm specifically referring to is the granular and not the overt. You want to make the argument that Israel is at war with Palestine in 1948, 1967, and all these things, and then say unprovoked is an incorrect statement. No. Okay, fine. My point is this. A bunch of civilians dancing and partying at a music festival, and Hamas decided to kill and capture them. That's unprovoked. Some of these people were tourists, and the left argues they're settlers, not civilians. Okay, well, listen, you answer to that. If you want to make the argument that Palestine being at war with Israel targets military bases, I would not call that unprovoked. I would be like, welcome to war. Everybody's claiming some justification. But the argument that there is no argument why they would kill civilians. They did. Yeah, see, that's unprovoked. Now, their argument is they're settlers. No, some of them were tourists. I've talked to friends of mine who are more anti-Israel, more pro-Israel. And there are many people who are like, it doesn't matter. The people who live there were born there. And I'm like, I'm not saying that. Make your arguments. Fine. My point is this. There were tourists there. That's unprovoked killing of civilians. You want to argue on behalf of Hamas? Argue why they did not round up the civilians, get them on a path out of the music festival to avoid casualties. Why? Because they're terrorists. They want to kill civilians. They put out videos of them holding babies. Sorry, there's no argument against that. You want to argue about the war and the crisis and all that, and I'll tell you, fine, war is awful. Atrocities occur. But there's no reason for them to be parading around civilians, killing civilians. Sorry. Because they know that we are good people. This is the reality. They know that we're good people. And so when we see civilian hostages, we are hard pressed to retaliate. That's the point of taking hostages. It's evil. It's not war. It's by any means necessary. And they're going to do what they do. Let me read the news because I'm starting to rant here. Harvard loses another major donor over its dismal failure to take an unequivocal stand against the barbaric murders of Israelis by Hamas. From Fortune. The Wexner Foundation became the latest donor to pull support. I'm not interested in your video. Latest donor to pull support from Harvard University over its response to the Hamas attack on Israel. The foundation's wealth is derived from L Brands, the former parent company of Victoria's Secret and Bath and Body Works. The philanthropy chaired by Leslie Wexner and Abigail Wexner said in a letter to the Harvard Board of Overseers Monday that it was ending its financial and programmatic relationship with the university. The foundation supports up to 10 government and public service professionals from Israel each year to pursue a one-year degree, blah, 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 blah. Okay, there's more. Billionaires who have pumped $500 million into Ivy League schools back out over failure to condemn the Hamas terror attack on Israel. Harvard and UPenn face losing hundreds of millions in future endowments. Oh, boy. Oh, you'll love to see it. Why? Well, look. If the stance of Harvard, the entire history was we defend free speech and I'm sorry, take it up with these students, I'd say, oh, come on, are you really pulling out? And this is because students had bad opinions. I mean, maybe these professors, need to be countered and free speech is important. And it's good they're speaking up because now we want people to go there. We can make these arguments. The problem is Harvard has consistently condemned one side and supported the other. And now, yes, they've condemned conservatives. And now they say, well, there's nothing we can do about these students. And you even have professors overtly at some of these universities defending Hamas. So my question then is, hey, man, these are the rules you made. You live by them. You wanted to support cancel culture. Don't expect me to stand in the way of your progress. This is what the left advocated for, that if you speak naughty words, they would take your job, they would take your money, and they'd kick you out of polite society. And so far be it from me to take from them their utopia. Hey, man, you reap what you sow. This is exactly what you wanted. You said the naughty words this time, and now you're losing everything. That's the world you live in. Hey, the world I live in, I've got people at Timcast, as I mentioned, pro-Israel, people who are anti-Israel. And we all work in, I wouldn't call it harmony, but with an understanding. People have opinions, and it requires us having conversations, and that's the best we can do. And so as we adhere to our principles and our morals, I will defend those who would follow in the similar path of free speech. If someone at this company whose job it is to, like, I don't know, file paperwork, posts their opinion on Twitter, I'm like, bro, I don't know what that has to do with doing the job of filing paperwork. And so if someone comes to me and they're like, you should scold them, I'm like, why? Now, as a friend, I'll talk to them about what I think. And they're allowed to have opinions. What more can be said? Now, it seems like there's going to be a lot of lost money. And there's more from the New York Post. Columbia University refuses to condemn professor who called Hamas attack awesome and exhilarating. I mean, this is amazing stuff. One guy, I don't know what university he's at, he's saying it's exhilarating. It's exhilarating. Columbia University has refused to comment on the growing furor over a tenured professor who called Hamas's terror attacks against Israel awesome, as a petition calling for his ouster gained more than 45,000 signatures. Professor of Politics and History Joseph Massad was accused of condoning and supporting terror in a Change.org petition created by 23-year-old student Maya Platek. The teacher called Hamas's attacks on Israel a stunning victory in an article he published on the electronic Intifada a day after the conflict ignited. Regardless of one's stance of the conflict, supporting and praising one of the worst acts of terror in history is never acceptable. We call on Columbia University to hold Massad responsible for his comments and immediately remove him from the Columbia faculty. A letter of solidarity with Massad was issued in turn, condemning the petition against him and calling out Columbia President Nimak Shafiq to unequivocally guarantee his physical safety and his academic freedom. Big challenges here. Here's my view. These are the rules you created, and I will not defend you. Sorry, doors that way. For the longest time, we have seen people terrified to speak up about what they believe in because the left thinks that naughty words should result in you losing your life. Like your career, your work, your apartment, your banking. How many people, how about this? Laura Loomer. She gets debanked, she gets censored, and she's Jewish. They accuse her of all the worst things in the world. Those are the rules they wanted to live by. Well, now they can live by them. Far be it from me. If you are someone who has bad opinions and you defend the right of everyone to have those bad opinions, I will defend your right to have those bad opinions. I will say you shouldn't be censored. Let the people speak. But if you live in a world where you think other people should be removed and censored, then you better believe that I will celebrate when you live by your own rules. For he who lives by the sword shall die by the sword. These professors, these leftists, have long advocated for censoring not even extreme opinions. And this is the ultimate point here. Why I say we're winning. They're losing their influence, they're losing their resources, and it's based on their own plans and policies. It always felt this way, that the path they had taken would be their own demise. And this is what they get. So let them all play that game. Here we go. New York City doctor Dana Diab is fired after celebrating the Hamas massacre of 260 Israelis, getting a taste of their own medicine at the Nova Music Festival near Gaza. There's an interesting conversation to be had about cancel culture. Should this doctor be fired for celebrating a terror attack? It is tough. Let me tell you from a business perspective, the world we live in. We have values. There are things that we value as businesses. For most of these businesses, they value nothing. They value their bottom line and their money. For publicly traded companies, I kind of get it. Now, I have this to contend with. We have employees here, as I've mentioned now for the 87th time, with varying opinions. If someone has an opinion that is offensive, perhaps it could negatively impact the company in some way. It could. Vendors may want to pull out. Certain businesses say, hey, we're not going to do business with you over this. And that's a reality. What I see with the modern cancel culture left is that you'd say something like generic conservative or moderate position, and they would attack you for it. That's cancel culture. If someone says something like, I don't think males should be competing against females in women's sports, they would say you're a bigot, you're a transphobe, and they would threaten you over it. I'll tell you this. We've had, we have multiple shows. We've tried to get guests, reach out to people. And of course, people on the left will be like, I don't want to get canceled. I can't do it. because they're terrified that even even being in the same photograph with me is going to get them to lose their jobs. Interesting. Well, right now, we have a doctor celebrating the massacring of civilians being fired. Yeah, look, if you are a hospital and you have a lot of employees, or I'm sorry, you have a lot of customers who are Jewish, and they see this, they may stop servicing your business unless you remove the individual. That is a reality. And that's something I think conservatives need to understand about how insane the left is. These businesses, why were they demanding you wear masks? Because they don't care about you. They don't care about morals or principle. They care about not getting a fine. Why is it that if someone said you put the flag in the window? Because they're just like, whatever the people around me say, I will adhere to. There are those of us who don't live by those rules, who don't live in that pathetic, sad reality. I do not live in that pathetic, sad reality. I make up my own mind. And if someone comes to me, look, we've had people upset over the opinions of our employees. We get negative comments on Timcast IRL about people we've had on the show or who work here who are Jewish. And then we have the inverse, where people who are Jewish are attacking us over the statements of some statements some of our other employees have made. And my attitude is just like, I would destroy. I would forego all of this before I'm going to compromise my principles. If someone comes to me and says, you need to do something about this statement, I'd be like, what should I give him a raise? Like, what do you mean? I don't understand how an opinion of an employee of mine has any impact on whether or not they're stacking boxes in the storeroom properly. And they say, well, it's a reflection on your business. No, it's not. It's a reflection on the opinion of that individual who's entitled to have opinions. The people who work for me are not required to believe what I believe as the boss. That's a stupid reality to live in. If someone comes to me and says, well, if you don't get rid of that person who stocks your storeroom, who's stacking, the checking the mail, then I won't do business with you. And I'll be like, see you later, dude. Bro, you don't get it. I would rather all of this go away and me go live in a van down by the river before you can come to me and make a demand of me over the opinions that aren't mine. That's me. But I got to tell you, the people who are supporting Hamas, let it be said again, these are the rules they decided to live by. So I'm not going to defend them. They don't work for me. They want to live in a world where they're not allowed to have opinions. Well, now you're waking up to that. And if someone comes to me, I'll say, hey, we're building a parallel economy. And in this parallel economy, there are people of very, very different opinions. We've had people on Timcast IRL, Michael Malice, for instance, defend, abolish the police. We've had conservatives say, no, defend and fund the police. And I've taken a more nuanced approach of course we need police. Funding for police, I think, is a good idea. They need better training. But in these big cities where the leftists live, let them abolish the police, see if I care. You're talking about cops that are appointed by Democrats anyway. You see, my position, for a while was very much I defend free speech, even for those I disagree with. And I've changed on that position because I've started to realize that if you are playing a political game where one side says we will take and never give, and you say I will give and never take, then guess what? You lose. If there are people who advocate for free speech, they are giving. I say, then I freely give in exchange. We share. That's compromise. And if there's one side saying we demand our right to speak our opinions, but we will deny that right to you, I say, well, then no, have a nice day. Free speech, in my opinion, defense of it, extends to those who agree with it. And if you don't agree with free speech, then fine. We can operate under your own rules. Let me give you the gist of this. Watching this person get fired, watching the universities lose hundreds of millions of dollars, it is glorious. And it is us winning the culture war. Why? Because the ideas of free speech are going to succeed. The constitutional rights, the ideals of the founding fathers, the best ones, not the bad ones, are going to win. And the far left who support acts of terrorism are losing. Let me show you how crazy it really is. We have this story. Alicia Keys posted on Instagram. She said, question, what would you do if you weren't afraid of anything? Tell me your truth. I've had my eyes on paragliding. And then side-eye. She's being attacked and accused of anti-Semitism. I have to wonder, to be completely honest, who doesn't know what paragliding represents right now with BLM and all that? But let's just operate under the assumption She literally was just talking about paragliding, but she's scared. That's it. Yo, it's so brutal. She's being roasted by people over this. Hey, look, man. These are the rules the left wanted to live by. And they can live by them. And the celebrities, these are the rules they wanted to live by. They played this game. Hey, if she really cared about it, she could speak up and say, dude, I support what I support. Now, I can respect the far left for outright just coming out and saying what they say. Good for them. That's why free speech is good. That's why we want them to speak up. Then they can get fired because of the rules they wanted to live by. In the end, where we end up is cultural institutions are starting to fall. The universities are faltering. We are winning the culture war. It is plain and simple. You know, it was only a matter of time before the rules they created imploded in their faces. And that's why we say get woke, go broke. It backfires beautifully. Now, we do have to ask ourselves what this means for the future. And I'm sure there are going to be many people who say, see, you're not allowed to criticize Israel, blah, 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 blah. Bro, I ain't going to comment on that. You know, I think it's silly. I can tell you this. Here at Timcast, you can outright criticize whoever you want. Seriously. And I have my lines and my limits. Mostly, it's just like I said, the opinions of people who work for me are not my opinions or the show's opinions. And the fact that someone works here is not a reflection on the opinions of me. And anybody who comes to me and claims otherwise, I'll tell you to shove off. I don't care. Literally. But I think what we've seen is, yeah, you can criticize Israel, man. I can say it outright like, hey, look, civilians are dying. It's a bad thing. I think, you know, we need to discuss Israel's response in cutting off water, etc. There's arguments to be made. But there's no problem being critical of Israel. In fact, a lot of people who are pro-Israel criticize them quite a bit. In fact, they're very critical of Netanyahu right now. The problem is they're not criticizing Israel. They're supporting the killing of civilians. It's very, very different. I got my lines, man. But it is curious. I don't know. If somebody who worked here came out with drastically different values to what we supported, then I think they'd probably not work here. I mean, that's reality. An example. If someone here started pushing weird, woke, racist things, I'd probably be like, this ain't the place for you. Right? What is the line and what is the limit? I believe in free speech for those who believe in free speech. If someone here started advocating for weird woke policies, defending the killing of civilians, and saying no one has a right to free speech, I'd probably be like, why are you here? Like, why are you working here? To be fair, again, I don't know how that impacts the person who's, say, like filing paperwork or lifting boxes. But if their job was overtly political, then we'd probably have those political debates, and that's kind of the point. But I have my limits, too. Someone who's actively fighting against American values is a detriment to the culture war we're fighting. I probably would not want to employ them. So get it. It is not always about principle, not for everybody. It's about our moral limits and our moral lines and the futures we're seeking to create. And if my goal is to win a culture war, to instill American values, personal responsibility, meritocracy, individualism, et cetera, and someone's actively working against that, I don't want to fund them. But if you believe in free speech, I'll tell you this. Jacobin, communists, socialists, whatever you want to call them, but they believe in free speech, advocate for free speech, and defend the free speech of those on the right. I subscribe. I want to read what they're saying, and they defend free speech. So I have no problem saying, yeah, I'll order that magazine and read what they're on about so I can better understand their perspectives and then explain why I think they're wrong. But they're right about free speech. And if they're right about free speech, I'll defend their right to free speech as well. I think we're winning this one because really in the end, it's about reason. If you can prove your point, a point to disagree with, then you deserve to win. If you have the truth on your side and the facts speak for themselves, you deserve to win. But if you're a hypocrite and a liar, too bad. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.